very happy to be joined now live at the Boston Public Library by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who represents the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District, including much of Boston and Cambridge.
And Cambridge.
And Cambridge, that's
To
right.
Cambridge.
Yeah.
Where I will be doing a coffee hour later today.
Oh, you
excellent.
will?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Are those fun, or are those just...
Well, they're more fun than the Republicans are going through right now, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, listen, I love being in community and being with my constituents.
Yeah.
You know, my Republican colleagues, I guess they have enough shame to recognize the wholesale harm they're doing, so
Yeah.
they're running scared constantly and
Screamed at.
refusing to do coffee hours and town halls. In fact, I will be doing some town halls in Republican districts.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I'll come back and talk about that.
Okay, okay. Well, let's first start off with, go ahead, Sue.
Yeah, let's talk about transit. We're going to be talking about transit later on with some transit experts. You have some ideas. You have some bills. You're caucusing with people. Talk about what your transportation for all idea is.
Well, first, let me just say, when I was elected to Congress almost 8 years ago now, I became the co-founder of one of our caucuses, is the Future of the Transportation Caucus. I founded it in partnership with Congressman Garcia from Chicago, Congressman Takano from California. We represent similar districts, vibrant, diverse, dynamic, and unequal, and really do believe that a lack of federal investment in public transportation, prioritizing equity, accessibility, and connectivity has contributed to a lot of our inequities and our disparities. And so transportation justice is really at the heart of our other goals: housing justice, economic justice, climate justice. And then recently, Senator Markey and I have reintroduced our legislation, the Freedom to Move Act. This is one of my favorite bill titles.
It is.
Because it is so literal, and it's a value, it's aspirational, but everyone should have the freedom to move. And we can do the work in partnership with our municipal colleagues in making our cities more livable. But what does that mean if people can't navigate them? Everyone deserves access to transportation that is accessible, affordable, rapid, and reliable. And again, my focus as a co-founder of the Future of Transportation Caucus is that when we talk about federal investment, that we're prioritizing equity, accessibility, connectivity, and sustainability. Public transportation, public transit is a public good, and we should invest in it that way. And so we want fair, free transit. You know, all the data supports that it increases ridership. Again, it allows us to meet other goals. And yesterday, Senator Markey and I rode one of those fare-free buses from down in Dudley to Ruggles Station, and it was great to spend time with riders and to hear from them the difference that this had made for them. A number of our elders, you know, one of the chief combatants of elder isolation is that people can age in community and remain connected to community. And the fact that having access to a fare-free bus line took away that burden. It gave that peace of mind that they can go see their grandchild at a school play, or go to the beauty salon, or go to their place of worship. And that's the thing about transportation. You know, people need to be able to get to work, to get to childcare, to get to healthcare appointments, to get to school. And I would just say, as someone who grew up facing a fair amount of financial hardship, you know, our car was repossessed a number of times, and I think people forget that for many, transportation is not an option. For many, it is their only choice. And we should eliminate those barriers. And again, it allows us to get at those broader goals of climate justice and economic justice.
And Congressman, we hear a lot about the T's financial woes, even with those movement forward on the free buses and stuff. So what's the financing look like for this? How could you do it?
Oh, I loathe that question.
Sorry.
Well, mostly because, you know, what I believe, we don't suffer from a deficit of resource. We do suffer from a deficit of prioritization and empathy. And the return on investment is great. Public transit is a public good, and we should invest in it like it is.
Yeah.
So
Ridership has gone up hugely
Yeah.
on those bus lines, hasn't
Absolutely,
it, too?
yeah.
Didn't they find that? And I think that when they've had this free transportation elsewhere, that's around the country, that has proven to be true.
Absolutely, and I also want to just say, as an unapologetic progressive, which really just means to be a disruptor of an unjust status quo, it's ideas like fair free transit or student debt cancellation that people really did try to marginalize and say that this was pie in the sky sort of stuff. And then, in the midst of a pandemic, these things were being piloted, and Kim Janey, when she was the mayor of the city of Boston, first piloted those fare-free lines. Mayor Wu, upon her election, continued to build upon that. But these pilots have been successful and proven all across our Commonwealth, from Merrimack Valley, from Lawrence, Somerville, Boston. So shout out to the MA7, doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is being a pace setter, leading for this Commonwealth and for this country. So, as Nelson Mandela said, it's always impossible until it is done. Our legislation, the Freedom to Move Act, builds on the success of fare-free pilot programs in Boston and across the Commonwealth, making robust investments to provide safe, high-quality, and fare-free rides for all. I did get a question yesterday. Someone was, asking about, how does this improve service? If people, and I said, at the end of the day, we want to promote ridership, and we continue to push for those robust federal investments from beyond just highways, roads and bridges when it comes to infrastructure. Transportation is infrastructure. We need those investments, and riders should never have to choose between safety and service.
Is anybody against this? I mean, because I talk to business leaders, you talk to business leaders, business owners, people who don't live in the city but live in the suburbs, that hire people who take, public transportation to work, who get upset when there's a problem with the MBTA because their workers are late or all those. Is there anyone who's saying this is a bad idea?
No one thinks it's a bad idea, just like they didn't think canceling student debt was necessarily a bad idea. It was just more, the question always is this feasible? Is this plausible? Can this actually happen? And again, we have pilots that are proven, that have increased ridership, that have resulted in people, being gainfully employed. It's resulted in fewer congestion on our roads, reduction of greenhouse emissions. So again, the return on investment is high. I want to say on our buses as well, because I did take time to speak to a couple of the bus drivers, one who hadn't seen me for a little while and said, you betrayed me, now you're with another bus line, you don't ride my line anymore. And I said, I moved. But, I was meeting people who've been driving buses for, 20, 25, 16 years, and, they love the role that they play in getting people where they need to go. It's bigger than, just point A to point B. But again, people's ability to navigate the city. And they said fare-free transit is safer because when people get on who don't have it, and they need to get to work, they need to get to school, they need to get to the grocery store, they need to pick up a prescription, whatever it is. The tension that creates for the bus driver who has built this community with people who get on this bus every day. And then sometimes that does then engage our law enforcement, and they don't want to have to do that. So if someone doesn't have it, why are we then going to criminalize poverty and deny someone the ability to get to where they need to go? And this is also more efficient because they can just board people by opening the back and the front door. So,
Congresswoman, we've heard a lot about Jeffrey Epstein for all summer long. It's continuing. I think Congress shut down to avoid talking about Jeffrey Epstein. That seems not to have worked. It's back, was the second week of September 12th or something like that one?
We're back the day after Labor Day.
The day after Labor Day, okay. So, you have called for a congressional hearing to allow the trafficking survivors of Jeffrey Epstein to speak to Congress. Tell us about that.
First, let me just say that unfortunately, my Republican colleagues have a long track record of the systemic protection of powerful men who have been predators. Whether you're talking about Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Donald Trump himself, and we see that happening with Jeffrey Epstein. And I do believe that in all of this talk about the Epstein files, and again, in my role in the Committee on Oversight and Reform, under the leadership of our ranking member, Robert Garcia, and our subcommittee chair, Summer Lee, we forced a vote to get a subpoena to the DOJ to demand release of those files. That happened at a subcommittee hearing on the Committee on Oversight and Reform, which I serve, a hearing about child trafficking. And it was a very smart and effective strategy to call out their hypocrisy, to say, you don't care about the trafficking of children, because if you did, you would not have Mike Johnson right now saying, let's adjourn and recess the House rather than take a vote on release of these files. So we forced a vote for that subpoena. And then I have followed up with this request for a hearing centering the voices of survivors. In full transparency, I'm a survivor of a near decade of childhood sexual abuse myself, and also campus sexual assault. And I need to just say this: when you are a child and you have been groomed, you have been preyed upon, you have been exploited and violated in the most egregious of ways, it is a lifetime sentence. The residual trauma of that experience changes you on a cellular level fundamentally for the rest of your lives. And these survivors, in addition to a complete release of the Epstein files with their names redacted, and those survivors who see it as a part of their process for accountability and healing, if they want to come forward, then they should be given a platform to do that, so that we can understand in a comprehensive way who were the enablers of Jeffrey Epstein, and how far-reaching is this abuse, corruption, and really cover-up. I've been back and forth with legal counsel and some of the survivors, and how they characterize it as an institutional betrayal, because it has gone on for decades. And moreover, there were people like a Maria Farmer who were canaries in the coal mine, and because they were not believed and people did not act, they were complicit or negligent, there were more victims over these many decades. And perhaps that could have been avoided if Jeffrey Epstein and his enablers had been taken into account quickly. I won't get into Maria's story.
But she was one of the first ones.
But she was one of the first ones.
Okay.
And again, if we are going to do the work truly of accountability, of transparency, of truth, and support these survivors who are long overdue in getting the visibility, the platform, and the accountability they deserve, this should be happening in the Committee on Oversight and Reform. My mentor, may he rest in peace and power, the great Elijah Cummings, who was the chair of the Committee on Oversight and Reform when I was first appointed as a freshman, said that it is the role of oversight to be an efficient and effective pursuit of the truth. And that's what I intend to do.
Why do you think Donald Trump is not releasing these documents? Because he could, as everybody knows, except for the grand jury stuff, he could do this today.
Well, I mean, look, Donald Trump, what? He doesn't make good on anything that actually stands to benefit people or to advance progress in this country. So it's certainly not surprising. And as I said, Republicans have been complicit in the protection of powerful predators rather than centering survivors. So they want to shield predators. I want to center and fight for survivors, and that's the work that I'm going to do. And I should say, any step towards progress for accountability and healing for these survivors is a victory for all survivors. In the same way that we saw that, and I certainly felt that as a survivor myself, with the Catholic Church as an example.
Yep. Let's pivot a little bit here and talk about the Democrats. I think it's fair to say that anytime the party that didn't win the White House is not in the White House, there is a reassessing, there's an inventory, there's a what the heck are we doing? I have been watching local leaders like Mayor Wu, like Governor Healy across the country, attorneys general across the country being sort of the folks. I don't want to make it sound like other people aren't standing up, but the ones that we see right now leading the charge for the Democrats. How would you assess where the Democrats are right now? Are Democrats finding their footing? Is Gavin Newsom with his tweets, which I've now come to completely adore and think is the most brilliant thing on the face of the earth, where he's mirroring Donald Trump's tweets, and then people are criticizing his tweets, and he's showing the Donald Trump tweets. Is there a momentum building, or are we still, the Democrats still in an assessment mode? And I know you're still fighting. I'm not making it sound like you're all just having a conference somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's both and, that is occurring, but I'll just tell you the way I see it. One, when I look at the militarization happening in D.C. right now,
Yeah.
and I hope we can talk more about that, but, it infuriates me because look how long we've been fighting for D.C. statehood, right? When I consider the impacts of this big, ugly bill, the draconian adverse impacts that this will have, on our most vulnerable, I can't help but think how we would have been better inoculated from these harms if we had passed Build Back Better. You know why we didn't pass Build Back Better? To me, this is a season of call a thing a thing. We didn't pass Build Back Better because of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. So you want to know where Democrats are, I'll tell you where I'm at. Where I'm at right now is this is the season of call a thing a thing. And I'm not going to, the harm that's coming is blunt. I'm not going to be nuanced or couch things. Democrats have to stop operating with scared power. I can't go out here and do the work of rebuilding this party. I mean, my God, we lost the youth vote. And not because they voted Republican, they just stayed home. Democrats have always been the party of young people because we represent bold policy solutions and aspirational ideas. And so it worries me that I have colleagues that think that our response to having lost the White House is, and to be in this Republican majority trifecta, is to moderate our aspirations. I disagree with that. I think the electorate has demonstrated that what they want is for us to advance policy solutions that are big and bold and go as deep as the hurt is. I can't rebuild this party to be one that is multiracial, intergenerational, and demand to have the gavel back to do what? So as important as it is that we are doing the work of resistance against Donald Trump and this hostile administration and this hostile government takeover and this march towards extremism, we also have to be offering an affirmative Democratic case. Who are we? What do we want the gavel for? We had a trifecta. We had the House, the Senate, and the White House. Look at what's happening in Texas. We didn't restore voting rights. We didn't pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We didn't address, police brutality and criminal legal reform. I can't rebuild a party if I'm going to tell people the reason why we have not advanced progress is because of a Jim Crow filibuster. The American people do not want us to respond with, yes, we may be. Yes, we'll try. Barack Obama was successful because he said, yes, we can. So this is the moment for us to be affirming, what will we do? And so my response in this moment, again, is truth-telling, call a thing, conducting real-time oversight. Dr. King said organizing is our most powerful weapon, and we have to dramatize the evil. And so that's why I am going into Republican districts, doing these town halls in partnership with progressive partners and other congressional colleagues, because we have to make sure people understand who are the architects of this harm. And then we have to simultaneously be making the affirmative case for what Democrats will do. Things like fair, free transit. So when people say to me, well, why are you reintroducing legislation that you're not going to be able to move? I'm like, well, any person of conscience should care about these issues. These are not partisan issues. Healthcare, transportation, paid leave, universal child care, housing that is affordable. These are rural issues. These are, ending the scourge that is gun violence. My God, we have a mass shooting generation, or school shooting. I mean, it's insane. So, that's what I'm focused on is the work of resistance, while also developing the affirmative vision and who are we and what will we do when we get the gavel back, and then making sure people understand who is responsible for this harm.
Congressman, we only have about a minute left, but you mentioned you want to speak more about what's going on with the National Guard in D.C. What do you want to say?
Yeah, again, if we had statehood, we would not be in a situation like this. But it's racist and rogue. It is devastating to see the criminalization of the unhoused with both Supreme Court decisions, and what is happening here in D.C., and then a targeting of black men and black youth in particular, which to me is very reminiscent of Boston after the Charles Stewart case, is very reminiscent of New York under Giuliani with stop and frisk. I have my godchildren who live in the city. They are young black boys, and they're afraid to go to their summer jobs. They're fearful of what it's going to be like, their walk for school. And again, don't think that anything Donald Trump has done, whether it's his targeting of sanctuary cities or the militarization of D.C., this has nothing to do with public safety, has nothing to do with law and order. When you are disappearing people from the streets of Somerville, when you are targeting people in this way, it's terrorism. And that terror, that fear that you're stoking makes us all less safe.
That's
So-
Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. Thank you very
Thank
much for
you.
joining us, Massachusetts 7th Congressional District. We say goodbye to our listeners at any PM, but make sure to tune in to the